Pet Behaviour Odysseys, Episode 1, Welcoming a Dog into Your Life. The Odyssey begins.
Hello and welcome to the first episode of our new podcast series, Pet Behaviour Odysseys. My name's Daniel Mills and I'm Professor of Veterinary Behavioural Medicine at the University of Lincoln, and I'm joined for this series by my colleague Millie Jones.
Hi, I'm Millie. I work in the Animal Behaviour Clinic at the University of Lincoln with Daniel. I'm a certified clinical animal behaviourist and see cases and help in follow-up support.
And what we're going to do in this series is we want you to join us with a family who we've been helping over an extended period of time with their little dog called Drax, and we'll introduce them in a few minutes. And we want to share with you their experience and our experience of working together to try and help Drax and his family live a better life. And we're calling it Odysseys because it's a long journey. A lot of these problems are complicated and they take a lot of commitment to sort out. But we do think that the effort is worth it, and actually your relationships can be strengthened with your pet as a result. And, you know, if you've got a pet with problem behavior, then actually it's a great learning opportunity to learn more about dogs or cats or whatever pet it is, and to learn more about yourself. So it's my pleasure to introduce Drax's parents, or guardians, whichever you prefer to be called. I know you had Drax before you became human parents, so if I can ask you to introduce yourself, starting with Becky.
Yeah, hi, I'm Becky, Drax's mummy.
And I am Craig, Drax's dad.
Yeah. So just before we sort of roll into things, maybe ask a little bit more about yourself. Before you got Drax, can you tell us a bit about how much experience you'd had with dogs and what your expectations were when you got Drax?
Yeah, so we'd both had dogs before, hadn't we, with previous relationships, but we've had a few years, obviously, without we've never had a dog in our own relationship, have we? So Drax was our first dog in ours, but when we both had dogs before, we were both quite young, weren't we? And I don't know about you, but we had a lot of in-laws looking after the dog all the time, so it wasn't really much responsibility from my end. Was that same with yours?
So we were never allowed dogs growing up. Dogs were seen as you'd have to look after them, but knowing that as kids we wouldn't, as parents didn't. I was bitten by a dog when I was young, which terrified my mum, and she would have never have let me have a dog. Although I'm a massive dog person, and just as Becky said, I rescued a dog with an ex-partner. We separated, and she kept the dog. And I'd never had a dog from a puppy that I could call my own. And I remember one morning waking up after doing a night shift. Becky walked in with this small, cute little sausage dog whose ears were far too big for his head.
So essentially we'd just got married 2 weeks before, and I was on a massive wedding come down blues. So it was like, we need something else to keep these. So like, let's get a dog. Although we were going on our honeymoon, weren't we, like 6 weeks after? So it was like a really spontaneous, not thought out decision. I just needed something to fill that void of the wedding that I just passed. I shot here. So yeah, come home, woke him up from a night shift and just handed in this cute little ball of sausage. So yeah.
So tell us a little bit about where you got Drax from. He was, 8 weeks when you got him then?
8 weeks, yeah. So didn't know anything about dog breeders. I just knew that sausage dogs were adorable and cute. And my friend actually had 2 sausage dogs as well. So just being around them, even though I knew they had lots of problems. But at the time, I just thought, it's just their dog, the grumpy. They just bark at everyone and they just growl when there's people around. That's not all sausage dogs. It definitely is all sausage dogs, by the way. But yeah, so I got it from a breeder in South Yorkshire. Went in and the house was all pristine. Actually, looking back now, probably a little bit too pristine. Mum was outside in a kennel and all the babies were inside. And Drax was the littlest of them all. Like, it was probably the runt, actually. Yeah, and I just there were hardly any research done, to be honest. Having looked back, I would have done a lot more around looking at proper dog breeders or even go down the rescue route. But ironically, I thought, I don't want to go rescue because what if there come with loads of problems?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's I really appreciate your honesty there, because, I'm sure some people listening to this say, oh, crikey, they should have done research, whatever. Most people don't. It does become a very spontaneous thing. And I mean, actually, the first cat that I got with my wife, sort of, we went to see the breeder and said, oh, why do you want this? Why do you want the cat? And I said, well, it's a gift for my wife. And she almost sort of turned away from me. And I was thinking, yeah, I'm actually a veterinary behaviourist. I do know a bit about them. This is not totally spontaneous, but we do, you see and you think, oh, yeah, the cat we've got at the moment, we went to see in the shelter, and the shelters, because they knew me, they said, yeah, you can take him today. Normally we'd ask for a 2-week cooling off period. So, I think it's normal enough for people to do that. And you go with the best intentions, trying to avoid problems, but it just happens. But that's also one of the joys, is, the pleasure that they bring us. So you mentioned that you thought Drax may have been the runt. Was that one of the things that actually attracted you? Because again, that's something that we see. I can see you nodding, but people are only listening to this. They can't see you nodding.
Yes. He was the smallest of the litter, and me being the smallest of my own litter, that is something that's very endearing to me. Except for my little sister, she's now littler than me, but only just. But he just stood out just because he was so small, and all the other little ones were just running all over him and knocking him over. I just wanted to go into rescue mode and rescue him. And
and that is, again, that's something which happens an awful lot. Is there's lots of features in dogs that draw out that nurturing instinct in us. And again, if they are the runt of the litter, that may be one of the factors that draws us in. We know that this is also an issue, with a lot of the short-nosed breeds, the big eyes, the high forehead. These are actually features that you get in human babies, and they're things that we find attractive. And so it means we're very emotional in relation to those types of dog as well. And obviously when they're puppies, there's some interesting work actually, which because dogs have such a long history with humans, that it's been proposed that actually round about the time of weaning is when they're at their cutest to humans, because it's actually part of that shift from being looked after by their dog mother into the human. And if they're really, really cute, they stand a much better chance of survival. If you travel around the world, the sort of village dogs, etc., somebody says, that cute little puppy that's 6 weeks old is particularly cute. And that means that the demand on the mother is that much less, because people start to feed that little puppy, and that's sort of maybe part of the history of domestication as well. So there's an awful lot that goes on under the radar, so to speak, where the dogs and most of the pets are pulling at our heartstrings. So you said that you just got married. And you hadn't had your honeymoon, though?
no.
2 weeks in. So what were your hopes of getting a dog at the time? Can you remember?
So I do tend to act in spontaneity without thinking things through, don't I?
I didn't know anything about it.
You would have been the voice of reason, the logical one, said, let's just think about this. Money, honeymoon. And I was like, I just need a dog. We just need to. It was either that or a baby at the time. So yeah, we wanted the dog.
You didn't have to wait 9 months for a dog.
Well, yeah, exactly. To be honest, I think we had been trying for a baby for a while, hadn't we? And it just wasn't happening. So we got married, and I was just desperate for a family. So it was like we've had the wedding. It was amazing. Obviously, we were really happy. I was just so desperate just to have that family unit, and a dog Drax, he brought that straight away. He absolutely did. So I don't ever regret getting him. Obviously, looking back, yeah, probably should have told you about it, and you could have talked me out of it to wait at least 6 more weeks, maybe. But when it was our honeymoon, we went to stay with my friend, who she's got a dog, so she looked after him well. But then when we came back, because we'd not really had a chance to form much of a close bond, he wouldn't even talk to me. Drax, not Craig. It was just he just didn't look at me. It was like that attachment had formed with my friend because we were away for about 2 weeks, and I was absolutely gutted. I was heartbroken. It was like, oh, he's supposed to love me. So that was sort of a massive wake up call, really. Like, right, you've got this dog. You really need to be invested in him. You can't just like jet off wherever you want and just leave him around. It's like, if you want to be a parent or a parental role for him, you need to be there, and you need to be there. And I think sort of from that moment, that's why I really, really stuck by him through all his complications and behaviour, because I feel like I let him down at the beginning. So I wanted to, no matter what happened, I knew I'd never give him up. I'd never sort of give up on him, because I invested in him. I'm his mum. No one else. So that's sort of, I think, really drove me to really want to just be there for him, I suppose.
That's fair enough. So, I mean, it's obviously, for a puppy going into a home, it's a fairly bewildering time, and I can sort of imagine that from Drax's perspective. Yeah, there's the leaving. He was with his mum when you picked him up?
Allegedly, there was a dog there who claimed was his mum. Whether or not it was, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, in hindsight, do you question then the breeder, whether or not, what the quality of the breeder was like? Or
I think so. I just think it was all very staged, looking back, and having spoken with other behaviourists in the past, just around where I got him from. That's something that can be quite common as well. So, like, just make it look like, because there were no like dog toys around or anything. There was no like feeding bowls. It was just very like, you go into a house, think, oh, this is such a tidy house. They're clean people. They must look after their dogs. Well, actually, why isn't there any toys around? Why isn't there any dog food around? Why is that? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just me being skeptical and trying to find a reason for how his brain works, and maybe nurture genetics were a part of it. But yeah, I don't know. I am a little bit skeptical.
So, I mean, did you visit them and take him home all in one day then? The first time? Yeah. Okay, so that in itself, you might think, but it could be a little bit of a red flag in that situation. So you mentioned,
we saw pictures online, and then I saw pictures online and then made contact that way, and then went to see you.
Yeah. Okay. And so you mentioned those first few weeks would have been fairly disruptive for him, and we know that is, experiences of changing bonds in young dogs can predispose them to a range of separation-related problems, because they got that strong attachment to their mother. And then, they go to live with a family, and sometimes, they get rehomed at 6 months, and, so that relationship gets broken. So what we think is that the dogs then become much more cautious in the relationship that they form. So I wouldn't be surprised if that early experience did have an impact on Drax looking back. Were there any other early experiences of note that you want to say anything about at this point?
I think that was the key one, wasn't it, really? The only other thing that happened, but more around his reactivity, was that when he was attacked by another dog in a park, when he was off lead and a dog came running over. And then after that, that's when his reactivity to other dogs started. And then obviously along the line, we had COVID lockdown then shortly after, which obviously won't have helped the situation, because I was constantly in the house with Drax then. Yeah. So, yeah. So there was quite a few big events that. But it was from a very young age though, where we did notice, especially the separation, that it's something we've never been able to leave him, have we? So so it is probably that really early experience that led to that.
So and looking back when you first came to us, I think in terms of the timeline, like you said, it was before COVID that you recognised there were things that weren't sort of as they should be in regards to the separation behaviour, and also his reactions to dogs. Obviously, there's some incidents there. So around that time, sort of probably late 2019, how did things start to progress sort of from what you'd call maybe more normal puppy towards starting to see this isn't quite right?
Oh, so we got him in March 2019. Probably by September 2019, that's when I got the first trainer out to work with him, because that's where we were taking him to puppy classes, weren't we? And it was the model pupil. It was Drax. He's so smart, and it was like that from a very young age, because we took him to like classes from never any problems. But then he had that attack in the park, and then when we took him to puppy class, he would just. Do you remember? We were just reacting to every single dog around. It was too much. And then this other dog came over and tried to mount him. That was off lead. It was just a nightmare. So we had to take him out of that because he just couldn't cope. And then we got her who was teaching that class to come out and start working with us, didn't we, to try and train him? But
I mean, before all that, I mean, we were monitoring him on a puppy cam, and we were practicing just baby steps of kind of wanting to leave the house.
That was through the trainer that they told us to do.
And I remember setting up, it was like an open top, like pen.
It was really big, wasn't it?
It covered half of his living room, so we had plenty of room. There were puppy pads in there. There was water bowl food. And I remember just watching it on the camera one day, and he was scaling the wall.
Scaling out of he was like climbing up it to get out, and then he'd just scratch at the front door, like constantly until his claws have led.
Until his pads were bleeding.
So at that point, we just said we can't leave him at any point now. So then, and it was actually quite lucky COVID happened, because it meant I can work from home all the time, because I don't know how else we would have managed it. It would have had to be in daycare all day, every day, or a family members. But we just said we can't leave him. He's going to hurt himself.
Yeah. And how do you kind of remember how you were both feeling, kind of from what we've just been talking about, sort of the excitement of getting the puppy and sort of having that kind of family unit, and then starting to have these issues?
I'll be honest, I jumped straight from, being absolutely smitten, and I've always wanted a dog that I could call my own from the very beginning, to should we look at reopening? I don't know if I ever said that to Becky, but it got to a point where, I mean, we didn't have lives. We couldn't do anything. Everything revolved around his dog.
It was literally like having a baby. So I got my wish, because he didn't have a life.
We genuinely did. We literally had to plan our social calendars around who was going to stay home. So we stopped doing things together, unless we could get an in-law to have him while we went out for a meal or went somewhere. So,
but then he started becoming reactive to people.
Yeah.
So
no one wanted him because he was scared of him.
We couldn't take him round to other people's house. When did that start? Like, we started reacting to actual people. I don't know what triggered that. I don't know if COVID contributed to that, just because he didn't see people as much. But yeah, it was just like one thing after another. It's like
dominoes.
We got to the point where we were prisoners in our own home, and we couldn't go out anywhere because walks were stressful. Going to people's houses was stressful. It was embarrassing. We were arguing.
And the irony of it is, when we were in the house, he was like a king. So he knew, it was almost like he knew what he was doing, and he
didn't know what he was doing at all.
He would come and lay. I mean, he's a perfect lap dog. I mean, until about 10 minutes ago, when he's decided to take himself to his bed, he was up on the sofa, laying across my lap like he does, and he has done since he was a pup.
Because it's his safe space. That's why.
It's strange, because he is Becky's number one. So in a situation where we're both in, he will be Becky's number one. If we're out on a walk and I'm walking him and Becky's in front, he's dying to get to Becky. If we're on his own, that's fine. Then I'm number one. And then, but on a night when we're sitting in watching TV, sitting on the sofa, that's when I'm number one. He comes over and he likes to lay on me.
Because you've got the biggest.
I've got biggest. It's the biggest. So it's really strange. If he kind of picks and chooses who he wants to be as the number one. He's very clever. He knows what he's doing.
No,
he does.
He's dogs work out what works for them. They're very quick to learn on that basis. So, I mean, you mentioned, Craig, that you seem to sort of go quickly from being sort of completely besotted to thinking, I think we need to get rid of this dog. But throughout that, I mean, I get the impression, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there was still, when he was good, it felt really good.
Oh, yeah, he was. Yeah, I mean,
and that's part of the
strange. Yeah, he was. When everything was going well, he was the perfect dog. I remember when people started to hear that we've got a dachshund. It was a case of notoriously stubborn, can't train them, can't do this, can't do that. And then I just remember being at work and getting video messages sent from Becky saying, I've taught him to sit down, I've taught him to give paw, and he'll say hello, and he'll play dead, and he'll roll over. And all of a sudden it was like, wow, what a really intelligent dog. And we've beaten the stereotype of stubborn dog. Yeah, I say you did.
I had a lot of time in COVID lockdown.
Stubborn, the stereotype had been broken of, he's a dog that's gonna be like, this nightmare. And then to see these positive things, it was kind of like, do you know what? Actually, it's not so bad. But then the next thing would happen, and it would be like fall from grace, and it would be a down to earth with a thud, and then you'd have to, it was very much kind of like tennis. It was going from one side to the other, back to the other, which obviously
is more like a drug habit. It's bad for you, but you can't do anything about it.
Yeah,
and it uses a lot of the same chemicals as what I was saying before. The attachment that we have and the bonds that we have, those chemicals are really, really powerful drivers, and that's it affects us very deeply. And you can look and rationalize stuff, but actually trying to act rationally is a completely different issue in that situation. So we've got to the point whereby you've identified that he's having a serious impact on your life and your relationship. You mentioned that you were having arguments and as well. So you must have started looking around for help to try and sort things out. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of the places you looked? And I don't know whether you went on to, the internet or TV programs, things like that. Did they have any influence on you as far as trying to help in those early days?
I can't remember who so obviously it was the trainer with the first one, but she was a trainer, wasn't she? She could do it were more tricks and calm and stuff like that. And obviously Drax had needed psychotherapy. But the first trainer she was a trainer as well. It must have been a Facebook recommendation. I was just Googling, researching, and found a lady who specialises in training dachshunds because she had one herself, and she was lovely. So I made contact with her, and she was really, really incredible. It got to the point where she was probably my therapist throughout it. She was fantastic with Drax. It needed a specialist, so she wasn't a behaviourist, so she didn't have the qualifications and all the letters after your name, Daniel, that you do. Again, I wasn't aware that there was different levels of trainers and behaviourists and things. But she was I can't say a bad word about her. She was absolutely fantastic. But yeah, like I said, it got to the point where we needed to try medication with Drax, and a trainer in there, as amazing they are, they're not able to recommend medications through a vet. She did try, but the vet said we needed to work with a what is it that you are a registered, not a registered behaviourist, but what is it when you can recommend medication?
Wait, firstly, for medication, you have to be a vet. So you can work. Clinical animal behaviourists can consider that, but they are not allowed to make recommendations directly to a client.
All right. Well, my vet wanted to have a behaviourist request advise them what medication to go on, which obviously a trainer themselves couldn't do that. So I worked with her for probably about a year, and she was fantastic with Drax, with his other behaviour issues like the reactivity. But again, it was more working on me and my confidence, because at that point, the walks that we were having, they were just so stressful. I'd literally get up at 5 o'clock in the morning when it was dark, drive 10 minutes down the road to go to a secluded wood just to walk him around so we didn't see anyone. And if we did, I'd be ducking behind cars. It was just a ball of anxiety. It was not what you get a dog for. The walks were not enjoyable at all. I was walking him because he needed to be walked, because obviously it's not fair if it wasn't. But they were so stressful. But she came out and did some work, and it was very much, she was working on me. And because obviously when I was walking him, my nerves were just feeding through the lead, and he was picking up with that, and it was just a ball of anxiety, just the same as I was. So she was very much training me to walk and be confident with him. But in terms of separation anxiety, it just, with all the other trainings we've been through before, it just seems to be the same step process. You have to work your steps and your time. So you go out for 3 seconds, come back in, go out for 5, come back in, go out for 3. It would just, that whole process, we did make some slight progress, but it just took over my life. I just couldn't do it. And I look back on emails that I wrote to my trainer just in crisis and tears, and just saying that I can't do this. It's just taking over my life. Or we'd get to 10 minutes, and then the next day I couldn't get him past 10 seconds. So I was just like in constant,
We're going to revisit that in a later episode, I think. Yeah. But and but I think this is it's a good point for us just to sort of pause and think, because you've mentioned how important that personal support side of things was for you throughout. Yeah. But so, I mean, we're getting near the end of this episode, so I'd just like to sort of capture how you felt in those early days before really seeking the help. I guess you'd had the trainer, so the trainer had been there and they'd been providing sort of social support to you in any case. But as far as, your attitude towards the problem and trying to find solutions, I mean, how did you feel at that time? Did you always feel that there was light at the end of the tunnel, or did you feel, okay, I've got this and I'm committed to it and I'm just going to have to grit my teeth and stick with it? I mean, how did you feel? And I'd like to hear from each of you separately, because you may have had very different feelings in those early days before you.
I was like a dog with a bone. Like, literally, once my mind's on something, I won't stop until I've found a solution to it. So I was determined to keep going, no matter what. It obviously cost me thousands and thousands of pounds in insurance, but I wouldn't have given up on him. I felt like it at times, and I took months where I've just had to take a break from it. But no, I wouldn't have given up.
And do you mind me asking, and feel free not to answer this question, we can edit it out as well if you like. I mean, at a personal level, your own sort of mental health and well-being, I mean, how did that take a hit in this whole situation?
Oh, massively. Absolutely. It does feel really lonely, because you just, everyone, like a lot, even you've even said like, oh, we'll just not get rid of him in so many words, but there's people around saying, oh, it's just a dog. And what are you sort of getting yourself stressed? They don't know what you're living, and they don't know that relationship you've got with him. But that has a massive toll on your mental health.
And you were still trying to start your own family as well at this time, from what you said, or yeah, sort of. Or you'd given up on that because of Drax, perhaps.
Well, yeah, essentially, yeah, because we were very stressed, weren't we? So that would have been helping.
It was also strange as well, because when you talk to people that didn't quite understand what you were living, as Becky said, it was a case of, it was quite embarrassing at times to say how bad it was.
We can't leave him alone. We can't bring him around. Oh, no, it'll be okay.
Yeah, so my friends would be like, are you coming out? And I said, I can't. I
can't leave the dog.
Can't leave dog. Yeah, you can leave him for a vet. You can't. You do not understand. I will come back to a house upside down. You know, I
really hurt dog.
Yeah, I just can't do it. You know, and even to this day now, in you know, when colleagues ask about, you know, how he's getting on, because I speak quite a lot about him at work. There's a lot more understanding, because there's people that I now work with in a different role that have got dogs. I wouldn't say with similar issues, but, you know, things that I can recognize that I've gone through. So there's a little bit more of an understanding and empathy, but it still feels embarrassing to say I've got a dog that's on medication that still can't be left alone.
For long.
You know, and he's on antidepressants. You know, people are saying, well, we've got a dog that's on antidepressants. You know, and as much as we understand it, because we're here every day, you know, to them, it's just bonkers. It's just bonkers.
Yeah. And well, as I said, I really want to thank you for your honesty and being so candid in describing it, because, as I said, one of the things that we hope that this series will bring to listeners, you know, it's not designed for aiming at the trainers primarily. It is aimed at hopefully reaching out to owners, because I think everybody's situation is unique, but the feelings that you've had, the stresses that you've had, and that sense of loneliness, and nobody's going to understand it. We hear that so often in the clinic. Friends, you know, they love you a lot, but they just don't understand what it is to have that member of the family, and that you're going to stick with it, and how it completely turns your life, you know, on the head. And you said, yeah, it's embarrassing, but if your dog needs that help, it needs that help. And so this is hopefully a story. As we go through the episodes, people will see the happy ending at the end, but at the time you don't know. Absolutely. And whilst problem behavior is very common, people don't talk about it, and they don't talk necessarily about too much. They just talk about the consequences. So yeah, I can't go out tonight, because I can't leave the dog, rather than, you know, understanding the commitments that you've made. And it's one of the things which I've heard other colleagues talk about, you know, in some cases where it doesn't work out and it ends up as a euthanasia. People grieve in those situations, not just the loss of their pet, but they grieve everything they gave up as well. You know, they didn't go to their niece's Christmas show or anything like that because they couldn't leave the dog. And so there's all of that gets, you know, it's such a strong emotional journey that you have to go through to try to resolve it. So as I said, I really hope that the listeners to this episode, people have started to realize that, oh, okay, I'm not alone. You know, I'm not the only person who's in this situation, and that there are networks out there where people can support each other. And we'll put some notes together to try and help people in that regard. So I just want to thank you a lot for, as I say, sharing those early experiences with us. And we'll probably draw a line under this episode at this point. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm so grateful to Becky and Craig for their honesty about everything, including their feelings. I think it's something we sometimes don't talk enough about. It's easy to focus on a perfect world that doesn't really exist, despite what others might tell us.
We all know that dogs should live a good number of years, and so the decision to get a dog is a long-term commitment, but getting a dog is also a very emotional event. And when we are emotional about things, we may stop being rational, and we often focus on our immediate needs and wants. This can give rise to issues in the longer term that we might not have considered, but which will need to be addressed sooner or later. We might start with a particular plan and intend to take things steady, but we are human, and so we can easily be overtaken by events, especially when we see those big puppy eyes looking up at us. We might like to think we would do things differently, but who really knows?
As professionals, I'd argue that thinking like that means not only might we get annoyed with clients or the decisions that they've made, but also that we put an unhelpful distance between ourselves and them, which undermines the therapeutic bond that is fundamental to providing successful support to another. We don't know other people's circumstances, and so should never judge them or their decisions. As professionals, we have to work in the world as we find it,